Welcome to Masterclass number 5. And in this session, we're going to talk about quantum time. For as long as I can remember, I've been puzzled by the passage of time. The fact that time could go from present to past, and something that happened to us would suddenly disappear and not be there anymore, always puzzled me. And many times I would be with my wife and we would be coming back from a holiday perhaps and would be on the plane. And I'd say to her, and now it's in the past. And it was always a mystery to me. And intuitively, I knew that time is different than how we experience it. And I was about to find this out in a very big way. It was 2001. And I was doing a seminar in Vancouver, Canada. And I finished the seminar, and I walked down the stairs of the stage to go to the back of the room to sign books and answer questions. And as I walked off the stage, what came into my mind, a voice said to me, "Your investments are going to be fine." Now, I hadn't been thinking about my investments at all. And I thought it was rather strange that this voice should say that to me. Let me give you a little backstory. 3 weeks earlier, I had made some very sizable investments that had gone horribly wrong. In fact, I had lost over $100,000 in 3 weeks. And needless to say, I was concerned about that. But here, the inner voice said to me, "Your investments are going to be fine." So I told my wife later on that evening what had happened. And she went, "Well, that's good, John," because she wasn't that pleased that I had lost $100,000. But what intrigued me is, how does it know? How does this inner voice know that my investments are going to be fine? Unless in some way it could see into the future. So I was very relieved, but of course I had no idea, are my investments going to do well or not? Over the next couple weeks, they lost more money, and now I was down over $200,000. I'll tell you, it's risky to be in speculative stocks. Over the next month, they continued to lose money. Now I was down over $250,000. But the voices said, "Your investment is going to be fine." That's what the inner voice told me. Then what happened is I started making back the money. Now I was only down $100,000. And over another month, I was even. And then over another month, I was up $100,000. At that point, I sold the investments. The voice had been right. But now that got me really intrigued. How did it know? How was it possible? And it said with such assurance that your investments are going to be fine. Now, how did it know unless the future had already happened? And somehow my subconscious had been able to go into the future, see that my investments had been fine, and report back to me in the past. But that's exactly what had happened. So that got me very interested, and I started to read and research all I could on quantum time. And what quantum time tells us is that past, present, and future are happening simultaneously. Now, I know this is not how we experience it. In our normal everyday life, time seems linear. In the dimension that we live in, it is linear. That past comes before present comes before future. This is the way it works. And yes, in the dimension of time and space, this is the way it works. But in quantum reality, what physicists tell us is that past, present, and future are actually happening simultaneously. As incredible as that sounds, that's what quantum physics tells us. Let me tell you another experience that happened to me. It was a couple years after this incident, and I threw out my back and I was bedridden. But I wasn't too concerned about it because I'd thrown out my back a few times before, and usually it follows a pattern, is I just lay low for a day or two and it gets better on its own. Only this time, it wasn't getting better on its own. Not only that, but I felt it in a different position to where my previous back problems were. And now I started to worry. In fact, it was a week, and it was so bad that I was using a bedpan. I couldn't put any pressure on my feet at all. I was in excruciating pain. I could not get out of bed. Now I was starting to worry because backs are funny things. I have a good friend of mine who threw out his back carrying a TV set down a set of stairs while he was moving, and it never got better. And backs are tricky. And now I'm starting to worry. And then I catch myself. Mr. Mind Power, what are you doing worrying? I mean, you can't worry because, of course, what does worry do? Worry is an energetic. Worry will only attract to you the things that you're worried about. So I decided, well, I have to get my mind power working for me. But I was feeling really needy, and I didn't really feel like doing my mind power exercises. What I really wanted to happen in a perfect world, what I would really want to happen is I would want someone to come in and heal me, for someone else to do the work and effort. And then it came to me. I know what I'm going to do. I will have my future self heal me. And so as soon as I thought of that, immediately what I did is I began talking to my future self. Because remember now, I've had this experience with my investments, knowing what was going to happen, and I've studied quantum theory, and I understand quantum time happening past, present, and future happening simultaneously. So if this is true, and I believe it to be true, then I can actually communicate with my future self. And that's what I did. I said, future self, I need your help. I need you to heal me. I want you to do whatever is necessary for me to have a healing. And then I just relaxed. And I began to imagine what my future self might be doing. And I saw my future self singing healing songs, which I do sometimes. And I saw my future self with the drumming and singing healing songs. And I saw my future self working with the energy web with his hands, as I sometimes do. And so I intuited that that is probably what he's doing right now. Now, I knew my future self would do it because my future self has a real interest in me getting better. If I don't get better, guess what happens? Then my future self is crippled. He can't get out of bed. So of course my future self is going to help me. And so I would just intuit, what is he doing? Now, I didn't have to visualize it, or I didn't have to imagine it. I wasn't actually going through a process of visualizing it. I was just intuiting in my mind what he must be doing. And as I would intuit in my mind what he must be doing, I could actually feel tingling in my back. Now, I did this several times a day for a couple days. And every time that I did it, I would feel a tingling in my back. Now, I wasn't imagining a tingling. I actually felt a tingling in my back. Gradually, over a couple days, it starts getting better. And after a week, I'm 100%. Now, would it have happened anyways? I have no idea. All I know is that when I asked my future self to heal me and accepting the healing from my future self, I got better. Now remember, I was 1 week unable to get out of bed, something that had never happened before. And I was worried, I was concerned. But I went to my future self, and he healed me. At least this is my belief. Then, once I was healed, what I did is I then became my future self. This is a couple weeks later now. And I waited until I was 100%. Then what I did is I went back to the bed where I was 2 weeks earlier, bedridden. I went back to the bed. Now the bed's empty, but I know in quantum time that actually I'm there. And so I said, I am your future self, John, and you have asked me to heal you. So what I'm going to do right now is I am going to heal you. And I started singing healing songs. And I got out my drum and began drumming. I worked with my hands, working with the energy web. While I'm doing this, there I am in front of the bed, and I'm imagining myself in the past, suffering and in pain, and I'm imagining that as I'm doing the healing from the future. And I said to my past self, I said, John, you can call upon me any time that you choose. I am your future self, and I am here to help you and assist you. Anytime you need guidance, anytime you need help, anytime you need support, you can call upon me. I am here for you. And that began my relationship with my future self. Then I got into mentoring myself in the past because I realized that if my future self can help me from the future, then actually I am my future self to myself in the past. And I began looking at times in my life where I had gone through difficulty, and I began to mentor myself. John, I am your future self, and you don't even know that I exist, but I am helping you from the future, and I would send back energy to myself in the past. Times when I had important decisions to make, I would help myself make those decisions in the past. Sounds crazy? Well, it is in some ways pretty bizarre. I'll agree with you. But let me quote Niels Bohr, the founder of quantum theory, as he was commenting on a colleague's paper. He said, "We all agree your theory is crazy. What divides us is whether it's crazy enough to have a chance of being right." I love that quote, and I put it in the chapter on quantum time in my book, Quantum Warrior, The Future of the Mind. Now, why would Niels Bohr say something like that to a colleague? Actually, it was a compliment. Because what is happening in this enigmatic quantum world defies our logic and sensibilities. So logically, it makes no sense. But that doesn't mean we can't accept that different laws apply in quantum reality than exist in our normal day-to-day life. And if we are willing to study and accept these laws, it opens up a whole new way for us to interact in our life that we would never have thought possible. And that's exactly how it is with quantum time, is that you have the ability through quantum time to mentor yourself in the past. For example, you're all aware that I had spent those 3 years in the woods putting together the original Mind Power training program, and that I had received many insights over and above what I'd read in books, and that my subconscious mind gave me the 6 laws. It gave me the different techniques of working with the subconscious. Now, that all happened in the past. But now that I understand quantum time, what I'm doing is I'm actually mentoring myself in the past by giving myself the laws. For example, the first law, thoughts are real forces. What I do now is that sometimes I will think of myself back in the woods and I'll go, John, I am your future self. And I want you to understand that there are 6 laws of the mind. And that the first law of the mind is thoughts are real forces. So what's happening as I am mentoring and guiding myself in the past is that I am setting up an extraordinary relationship between my future self, my present self, and my past self. And the more that I do this, what happens is this gives me complete confidence that my future self is now mentoring me. How am I so assured that my future self is mentoring and helping me? Well, if I'm doing it now to myself in the past, why would I stop? So, of course, my future self right now is mentoring me, is helping me, is guiding me. And this has set up the relationship between my past, present, and future self. So there's actually 3 of us. There's what's happening now, there's my past self, and my future self. And we have an extraordinary relationship together. I remember a few years ago, I had a lecture tour of Russia, and my first date was in Moscow, and I flew there a couple days ahead to get over jet lag. But jet lag's a funny thing, and here it was the night before that I'm to do a full-day seminar, and I just can't get to sleep. And I'm lying in bed, and okay, maybe I'll put on a bit of TV, try and get over it. I'm looking at the clock. It's midnight now, and I've got to get up at 7 in the morning. Okay, turn off the TV. I just can't get to sleep. Now it's 2 in the morning. Now it's 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning. Put on TV again. No, I got to go back to sleep. Anyways, there it is, 7 in the morning. I have not slept at all. Not even 1 minute. Up the entire night. And I've got a full-day seminar in front of me. I have no idea how I'm going to do it. I'm exhausted. And then I go into the shower and I'm showering. And while I'm showering, something quite extraordinary is happening is I'm noticing that actually I'm starting to feel pretty good. I'm not really all that tired, and I get out of the shower and I'm drying myself and I'm going, this is amazing. I actually don't feel tired at all. And at that point, I realized what was happening. Obviously, my future self was sending back energy to me to empower me to be able to do the seminar. And I was so relieved to know that. And I went and did the seminar, and I was fine, and I felt good throughout the entire seminar. At the end of the day, I was exhausted, and I crashed. But nonetheless, my future self had helped me. How do I know that? Because when I flew back home, and again, you get jet lag both sides. When I flew back home, fully over jet lag, a couple weeks later, I decided it was time to help my past self in Moscow. And I said, John, you're in the shower right now, and you have not slept a wink all night. I am your future self. Now, you haven't even asked for this, John. You don't even know that I'm going to do it. But I can see that you have a problem and you're dead tired, and it's going to be a very hard day for you unless you get all this energy. So what I'm doing now is I am sending you all this energy, and I began projecting to myself in Moscow, sending myself all this energy. And I did that a number of times over the next couple days. And again, every time that I do this from the future, I always say to my past self, John, you can call upon me at any time. I am here to help you. Past, present, and future are happening simultaneously. In the magazine The New Scientist, in the February 2018 issue, on the cover, it says, "When the future comes before the past." The article is written by scientist Adam Becker, author of What is Real? The Unfinished Quest for the Meaning of Quantum Physics. And quoting from various quantum physicists and mathematicians, he builds the case for retrocausality. Now, retrocausality is the theory that time travels both forward and past, and that the future can influence the present, and the present can influence the past. That the dimensions of past, present, and future form a single ever-existing block. If indeed this is true, and this is what quantum physicists are suggesting, then in a block universe, quantum retrocausality wouldn't be so strange. If the past and the future coexist, if past events don't fade away before future ones come into being, then the future could easily influence the past. In fact, it should. Now, The New Scientist is not some sensational supermarket tabloid where this theory is being postulated. This is a prestigious academic publication where the new ideas and research are being shared with the scientific community. And quantum time was deemed important enough to grace the cover. Now, remember I told you about the experiment of Robert John at Princeton University, where he had participants try and influence the random event generator. Some would try and get more ones than zeros, others more zeros than ones. And the results that he obtained were so astounding that he concluded that the power of conscious intention was an active force in the universe, a force that science had yet to fully comprehend. And when he sent his research findings to the U.S. National Research Council, one of the most prestigious bodies in science in America, they concluded that the possibility of getting these results by chance alone were over 1 trillion to 1. In other words, conscious intention works. But of course, you know that. Now, I haven't told you another part of that experiment, and I couldn't tell you until I introduced quantum time. What he also did with thousands of experiments is that he had participants try and influence the random event generator, not while it was happening, but after it had finished. So he would run a number of trials. He would put the results in a sealed envelope that nobody had seen. And then about 2 weeks later, he would have participants come in and try and influence the results. Some of them tried more ones. Some of them tried more zeros. Incredibly, he got just as good of results. In fact, that's not quite true. Statistically, he got even better results in people influencing the random event generator. It seems that conscious intention even works more powerful when you work into the past and future. This is just so incredible. Science is telling us that in a quantum dimension, beyond our experience of time and space that is linear, that beyond this dimension, and let's realize in the quantum dimension, past, present, and future are happening simultaneously. Professor of Physics Dr. H. Price at the University of Cambridge goes even further. He says, if the laws of quantum physics obey time reversal, as they seem to, then retrocausality is inevitable. I have to repeat this. One of the world's most esteemed physicists is telling us, if the laws of quantum physics obey time reversal, as they seem to, then retrocausality is inevitable. It is inevitable. And if it's inevitable, then we can work with these laws. Let me share with you another time that I used quantum time. My wife and I, we were driving along the highway one time, and there was a light rain, and I was behind someone that was going very slow, and I decided, okay, I'm going to pull out and pass. So I looked in my rear view mirror, and I looked in my side mirror, and I immediately made an abrupt turn to pull out. I had not checked my blind spot. And as I pulled out, I suddenly saw that there was a motorcycle rider, and I had cut him off, and now he was gyrating wildly. The handlebars were almost touching the road. I could see himself desperately trying to get hold. And I'm watching all this in the rear view mirror while I'm driving, and at the same time looking ahead. I'm thinking, oh my God, I think I've caused an accident. Fortunately, he recovered. I was so shaken by that ordeal that a couple minutes later, I just looked for a place to turn off, and I turned off the car. And I said, Sylvia, we have to help that motorcycle rider. And what I did is I began to project into the past. And I began to quantum align with what happened a few minutes earlier. And I said to the motorcycle rider, you are about to be cut off by a car. Now, you cannot hear my words, but I'm projecting to you to be extraordinarily vigilant because you are about to be cut off by a car. Be very vigilant. Something is about to happen. And I did that for several minutes. Now, do I think that he actually heard me? No, I don't. Do I think that subconsciously he had picked up the energetic of a warning that made him extra vigilant? Yes, I do. Because remember, we are all connected. So if I'm projecting with emotion, and believe me, I was projecting with emotion and feeling because I had almost caused a major accident, that somehow on a subconscious level, I was helping him. I not only did it that time, I have done it many times. So what do our religions have to say about past, present, and future? Now, obviously, they don't talk about quantum time, but are there experiences, are there examples in our major religions that reinforce this? Well, first of all, let's go to the Bible. Jesus is in the Garden of Gethsemane, and he's about to be captured by the soldiers and crucified. And he says to Peter, "Before the cock crows, you will deny me 3 times." And Peter says, "Oh, Lord, I would never deny you." And the soldiers come and they go, "There he is, get Jesus. These other people are with him." And Peter says, No, I'm not with him." And there's a servant girl that goes, "No, I saw that man with Jesus. He's one of them." And again, Peter, for the second time, says, "No, I have nothing to do with Jesus." And then a third time, he denies it. And as soon as he denies it the third time, the cock crows. It happened exactly like Jesus said it would. But then we come to the question, how did Jesus know that Peter would deny him 3 times before the cock crow, unless he saw it in the future, unless he was able to go into the future, see that it had happened, and then tell Peter this is what's going to happen. But if he was able to see in the future, then obviously the future in some dimension must have already happened. All the major religions have examples of being able to see into the future from the present and being able to influence the past from the present. Some might dismiss this as superstition or simply fairy tales, but now that quantum physics is telling us that past, present, and future are existing simultaneously, we should revisit these teachings and see if there's something there of value. In the Bhagavad Gita, which is the holy text of the Hindus, there is a passage where Krishna and Lord Arjuna are having a conversation. Krishna is a god and able to travel through all the dimensions. Lord Arjuna, his disciple, is about to go into a major battle. It is the night before, and he realizes that there are going to be thousands of people that will be killed and many more injured on both sides. And he's very distressed. In the Bhagavad Gita, it says that Krishna takes Lord Arjuna to another dimension. This is very interesting. He is taken to another dimension, and he's shown that what is going to happen has already happened. So there is nothing to be distressed about. No reason to be in anguish because it has already happened and there is nothing to be done. So be at peace. It is already written in the book of fate and destiny. And then Krishna brings Lord Arjuna back to the regular dimension of time and space. In the Quran, the holy text of Islam, again, there are examples of past, present, and future happening simultaneously, and being able to go into the future and see what's going to happen and bringing back this information to the present. It's so astounding to think that time is different from what we experience it to be. We already know that the passage of time is not constant and differs depending on how fast you are traveling. Einstein's thought experiment, called the twin paradox theory, shares how this works. You have 2 identical twins, and one of them goes up in a rocket ship, which is traveling almost at the speed of light, and the other twin remains home. Now we know that as you approach the speed of light, time slows. The one twin in the rocket ship is gone for 10 years, while the other one remains on Earth. Then when the rocket ship comes back, the one twin in the rocket ship has aged only 1 year, and the one who has remained on Earth has aged 10. How can this be? Because time is affected by movement, which is the beginning point of Einstein's relativity theory. It's truly life-changing to realize that time is different than what we experience it to be, and that there is a dimension, a quantum reality, where past, present, and future are happening simultaneously. This opens up many possibilities. Einstein said, people like us who believe in the laws of physics know that the distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubborn and persistent illusion. It may be an illusion, but this illusion is a good illusion, and it's backed by our five senses. So I'm in no way suggesting that you ignore past, present, and future the way they happen to us in our present reality. It is real enough in this dimension. What I am suggesting is that there are new revolutionary ways to work in quantum time that can assist you immeasurably. One of them is quantum mentoring. Now, we all know the importance of having role models. And I think I've shared with you already that I've had two role models and heroes in my life growing up. One was John Lennon, and the other was Muhammad Ali. And the reason that I had John Lennon as a role model is, first of all, he made his living doing what he loved. He was creative. He was fun. He was successful. And most importantly, he was authentic. And I admired that as a young boy, having John Lennon as my role model. My second role model was Muhammad Ali. And again, he made his living doing what he loved. He was creative. He was fun. He was successful. And he, too, was an authentic human being. And that is the highest praise that I can give to anybody. Be an authentic human being. And of course, they had their role models as well. John Lennon idolized Muddy Waters and Chuck Berry. And Muhammad Ali, he studied the great boxers before him and how they did it and what qualities did they possess. And they tried to recreate those same qualities in themselves. And that is the power of role models and having mentors, even if you don't know them. Most highly successful people have role models and individuals that they emulate. And it makes perfect sense. To be inspired by someone who has achieved success in the area that you are presently working in gives you added motivation. The fact that they overcame obstacles and found their way to success inspires you to do the same. But it is more than just motivation. When you have a role model, even though you might not be aware of it, the more that you study, the more that you think about them, the more that you try and emulate them, what are you doing? Of course you're making these imprints into the subconscious. But that's one way of looking at it. What this is doing is tapping into their wisdom on a subconscious level. That's the traditional method. Now, let's get into quantum mentoring. And what quantum mentoring is that we look at the quantum truths that everything is consciousness and energy, that everything is connected, that past, present, and future are happening simultaneously, and that those quantum mentors, even though they might be dead, they are vibrating in the energy web and can be accessed, that they have not really passed. They are not really dead, that in the quantum reality, that existence is happening now. And you can tap into any person that you choose, and you can make them your quantum mentor. I first taught this to an artist that I met on a lecture tour when I was in South Africa. His name was Graham Kearney. He had his first show at 14. He was an extraordinary artist. I met him when he was 19. And I taught him the principle of quantum mentoring, of having conversations with the great artists that he admired. Now, previous to this, he had his favorite artists as role models, but I taught him quantum mentoring and to actually have conversations with them. And so he did this practice, and over a couple months, he said, I could actually feel their presence. They had stepped in and began tutoring me, mentoring me, making me a much greater artist. Now, was this really happening, or was it his imagination? Well, all I know is that his paintings grace hotel lobbies of the major five-star hotels all over the world, and he has wealthy patrons from all over the world, and that he has successful gallery shows, and that he is an extraordinary artist, that quantum mentoring, at least he feels, was a big part in his development. So here's the steps that you follow in creating a quantum mentor. First of all, pick a quantum mentor, someone that you think it would be very advantageous for you to have as a mentor. Secondly, read and study all you can on that individual. What qualities does he or she have? What are their habits? What are their beliefs? What are their codes of conduct? How do they live their life? And immerse yourself in everything that you can about this individual. Then the third step is what I call quantum aligning. And that's where you are reminding yourself that everything is consciousness and energy, everything is connected, that this individual is vibrating in the web right now, and that I can align with this person, ask them whatever I choose, have their wisdom become my wisdom. And then the fourth step is actually having a conversation with them. Now, when you have a conversation with them, this is an inner conversation, and you're using your imagination. And when you begin this process, it almost feels a little bit forced, like, well, it's only my imagination doing it. It's not really them. But what you'll find, and that's the way it probably will go for the first few times. But again, how do you reach the subconscious? With repetition. The more that you repeat this, what you're going to find is that these people will come alive in your consciousness, and that you can actually have conversations with them. But another method which I've come to think of as a more powerful technique, one that I presently use, is to enter into a high telepathic rapport with my chosen quantum partner and simply download their information, their insights, their wisdom. In this method, I am not just using my mind, but both my body and mind, and I feel the connection. Now, this feeling part is important, and it's an actual bodily feeling. Harnessing both the mind and body makes this experience more real. I use the mind to remind myself that I am in the energy web and connected to everything. And then I try to actually feel it. Feel the sensation of being connected. Of course, the more you practice this, the more you're able to actually feel yourself in the web and connected to everything. With continued practice, you can have this experience. In this meditative state, I download messages that transcend any words or ideas. How? By simply intending it to happen. We have this ability if we believe we can. This is the work of a quantum warrior, an athlete of the mind. Now, let me be clear. It isn't words we are hearing, but feelings of connection and the experience of a download happening. We don't need to know or understand what we're downloading. All will be revealed in its own good time. Once again, our imagination starts the process, but there comes a shift when it drops away. We cross the chasm and enter into alignment with the energy web, where our quantum partner's connection is readily available and the download happens. Again, it must be stressed that our ability to believe this is possible is crucial. This is not a naive belief built on hope alone, but rather a belief nurtured and strengthened by our contemplation of the laws of the universe. Everything exists for us as a possibility. Everything, including having a quantum relationship. This we must believe. It is our faith and belief in these possibilities that allows us to do this. In our continued practice of connecting to our quantum partners and downloading their luminosity over a period of months, there comes a point when we feel their presence with us at all times, or if not at all times, at least many times a day. And at this stage of our practice, the relationship ceases to be conceptual. Our mentor has now become our quantum partner with all the possibilities that this brings. I'm speaking from first-hand experience here. I have established quantum relationships in this way. My quantum partners are with me at all times, even when I'm not thinking of them. Such is the power of this technique. Now let's talk about reimagining and reprogramming the past. There's a growing consensus among psychologists and neuroscientists that the brain stores only fragments of memories rather than the whole memory. That recall of a memory involves a series of neurological processes where fragments of the memory are located and then flashed out. But not all the memory is stored, only a chunk of it. Remember, the brain looks for maximum efficiency and will adopt any shortcut it can to save energy. That's why I mentioned in a previous session that habits are so powerful because the brain wants you to have habits so that activities become automatic. So too in memory storage. The brain creates a process called chunking so that it will not have to store the entire memory. It will take little chunks of an incident and store these fragments as memory. The whole complete situation is never stored. This is startling to realize, as we had always assumed that whole memories would be stored even if we couldn't remember it all. Now we know differently. This process of fragmentation, while saving energy, can be problematic because memories can then be misinterpreted and have a bias to them according to our own personal bias of people and situations, and especially with the mind's tendency to create stories about everything. You have created stories about your limitations, your relationships, your possibilities in life, and often they're based upon past experiences which we now realize can be based upon embellished memories. And on top of that, if we have our own emotional charge attached, this will influence the memory as well. So in these situations, we're not getting a true reflection of what actually happened in our past. We're getting an approximation with our biases attached to it. We're getting a story rather than a memory, a story that we have helped create. For example, my wife has two sisters, and the two sisters are twins. There's only a couple of years difference between them, so they grew up together. And yet their memories, often of family events, are starkly different from one another. Not just minor differences, but major things like how well their parents got along and how healthy or sick their parents were during their upbringing. Now, how can that be? Nobody's lying. Well, each of them interpreted their particular memory chunk in a different way. Memory, we now realize, can be massaged, embellished, biased, according to our own internal dialogue and preferences. Now, all of this is unconscious. We aren't even aware that this process is happening. But knowing that this can take place encourages us to examine our past through a different lens. With our new understanding of the neurological mechanism of how the brain works, we can explore new ways of reimagining our past. Our past, it seems, may not be what we thought it was. And this could be very good news that we can use to our advantage. The first technique is to search for exaggeration or distortion by using a different lens of reality. And by a different lens of reality, I mean a different perspective. Let me tell you about a student of mine who I worked with. His perception of what had happened to him when he grew up is that he was not loved by his parents. He could not remember one time when they said, "I love you," and he could not remember anything that indicated that they loved him at all. And this was a great wound for him. And so he was looking at this memory through the lens of, I was never loved by my parents. And of course, if you look through that lens, then guess what? That's exactly what you find. So what I suggested to him is, why don't you look through the lens of, I was loved by my parents? And he said, well, there's no use trying that because I wasn't. And I, of course, explained to him the concept and explained to him how things get embellished and how things get forgotten and how memories are just chunks of memories. So I said, try this technique. Look through the lens that I was loved. And he did this for a week and then came back and saw me. And he said, John, it was so extraordinary. I thought that when I looked through the lens of I was loved, that I would find nothing. But actually what I found is that they were very strict with me. And I took this to be that they didn't love me. But actually, they wanted the best for me. And that nothing that I did was ever good enough, but it was because they were encouraging me to be better. Actually, they did love me. In their own way, they loved me deeply. By looking through the lens of I was loved, he discovered, indeed, he was loved. I remember working with a woman. Actually, I was doing a weekend seminar in South Africa, and I brought up this concept. And this woman was an entrepreneur, and she was having all kinds of problems being successful. I thought that probably that she would have some negative beliefs around success. And so we looked at all her beliefs about money and success, and one of them was, you can't trust anybody. Well, how are you going to be successful in business if you can't trust anybody? And I said, are you sure that this is true? And she said, yes, it's true. You really can't trust anybody. And of course, probing deeper, what she shared is that she had been betrayed by a previous partner who took all the business and left her bankrupt, and from that incident was so traumatized. And again, what happens with emotions? Emotions imprint into the subconscious through repetition. So she had become so traumatized by this event that she said, "You can't trust anybody." And I said, "Well, do you think that that's true?" And she said, "Absolutely, it's true." So I said, "Okay, we're getting together again tomorrow. What I want you to do is between 5 o'clock tonight and 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, I want you to look through the lens that there are many people that I can trust." And she said, "Well, it's ridiculous. You can't trust people. I don't have anybody I can trust." I said, "Well, just look through the lens that there are people that I can trust, and then we'll work on it tomorrow." So the next day, I asked her, "How did it go?" And she said, "I did the process exactly as you explained, John. And do you know that there's only 23 people that I discovered I could trust?" And the funny thing is, she didn't even see the irony of it. It was like proof that you can't trust anybody. There's only 23 people you can trust. And I pointed it out to her. And of course, she laughed, and the whole audience laughed. So she was looking through a different lens. And that's what you do in this technique. You search for exaggeration and distortion using a different lens, especially when you have absolutes. Remember my student Cindy that was having problems with relationships, and one of her beliefs was there's no good men left out there? Well, that's an absolute. So whenever you see absolutes, you can be quite confident that there's exaggeration and distortion in your memory. I remember working with a woman in Los Angeles who was trying to lose weight, and she said that she has no self-discipline. I asked her about it. "You mean you've never had self-discipline in your life?" "No, that's one of my problems. That's why I can't lose weight. I've just no self-discipline. I've never had self-discipline." And I said, "Well, what I want you to do is I want you to look through the lens that I have self-discipline." And she said, "Well, it's no point. I don't have it, and I've never had it." Again, beliefs become entrenched. You repeat them over and over again. They make an impact into the subconscious. So this belief was entrenched. So in this technique, you search for exaggeration and distortion using a different lens. So I had her look at her past through the lens of, I have been disciplined in my past. And she looked through that lens over a number of days, and she actually said, "Well, when I was a student, I was quite disciplined. And actually, I discovered not only that, but through my early working life, I had discipline. And even now, I'm very disciplined in paying my bills. I pay all my bills on time." So here it was a woman who was having problem losing weight because her belief was, I have no self-discipline. And looking through the lens of I have self-discipline, she discovered she did indeed. Now, let me review the basics of this technique. First, you look for possible exaggeration or distortion of a memory in your past. I say possible because you are presently having a different perspective. So at first it seems a little strange to be looking for something that you're not even sure exists. But as I have shared with you in the previous examples, this can be very valuable. An easy way to start is to look for any absolutes that you are using, such as Cindy's, "There are no good men left," or the entrepreneur who believed, "You can't trust anyone." Absolutes almost always have a distortion and bias to them, based on our own prejudices and projections. Another area to look is anywhere where a strong emotional charge seems to be attached to it. Whether this charge is on another person or yourself, it is a clue. This emotional charge indicates that work needs to be done here. So once you've identified where you want to explore, choose an opposite viewpoint to examine the memory or situation. Again, using the examples I have shared, the man who thought his parents never loved him used the new lens of, my parents loved me, and he searched for examples. It's like you are a detective looking for new clues, something not noticed before. Now, you must be fully engaged and be willing to actually discover something new, not grudgingly holding on to your old position to prove that it is right. You must try and search for new possibilities, like a gold miner panning for gold, looking closely at every little speck to see if something is there. We search for the inner gold of new revelations. Knowing now how the mind works and distorts memory should give us encouragement to try this method. Now, once you have discovered a distortion or embellishment that no longer serves you, you can reprogram the past through conscious repetition of this new revelation. Using the power of repetition, you remind yourself many times that actually you were loved, or you have discipline, or that there are many men out there for me, or whatever new realization has been revealed to you. You actively begin programming this new, more empowering memory into consciousness. This is reprogramming the past. In quantum time, past, present, and future are happening simultaneously. So we have to realize that there is another dimension of reality beyond our normal reality, beyond our five senses, where past, present, and future are happening simultaneously. Because if this is true, this means that our past selves, our present selves, and our future selves are all active parts of who we are now. And we can interact with all these parts anytime we choose. We can mentor ourselves in the past. We can go to our future self and be mentored by our future self. We can help our future self. Our future self can help us now. And sometimes we can just be in the present, feeling and aware of our future and past self, coexisting with us now in the energy web. There are many possibilities on how we can interact with these three parts of ourself. The more that we do this, the more that it will become quite natural to us. We can also mentor with any individual from the past or future and have a quantum mentorship with them, a very real, dynamic relationship that will bring us much insight and wisdom. And finally, we can reprogram the past by reinterpreting the past. These are all valuable steps in working with quantum time. I must admit, when I first came out and started teaching quantum time, I was a little bit hesitant about it because I thought people are going to think I'm crazy. I mean, they're going to forgive me because they're going to say, well, I love his other work, but this stuff is really too far out, and it's too crazy for me. But actually, what I've found is the exact opposite. I'm really pleased that most people, even though they don't necessarily understand it logically, they intuitively pick up that there is something here, and that's good. Now, before I finish, Let me take a look at the big picture. Here's what I think is happening. I think that as a result of my working in quantum time in the ways that I've been sharing with you, working with my past self, working with my future self, connecting with quantum mentors, is that I am rewiring the neurological circuits of my brain, giving me this ability. Remember in the Avril Pascal-Lyon experiments with the pianists? By imagining in their mind that they were playing new concertos on the piano, neurologists could see new circuits and new connections of neurons being created, even though it was only happening in their mind. I think that's what's happening by me doing these quantum time practices over and over again. I am actually rewiring my circuitry, giving me this ability. Not only that, but my subconscious is watching me do it and seeing how I believe in this process. So it assumes that I have this ability and creates new inner programs accordingly. So it is also active in this process, and now new empowering subconscious imprints are happening, which are weaving the web, helping me to develop these abilities as well. It's happening on many different levels. It's very exciting. I feel like I'm at the forefront of a new revolution in consciousness. And it's not just me. This is what all of us can do if we have the vision and desire. So it is with great enthusiasm that I offer quantum time to you. This is a very extraordinary part of being a human being, a part that we had not previously realized we possessed. I believe that we are at the beginning of a whole new era of conscious evolution, where we will continue to discover the potentials of the human mind, and we will activate these potentials and evolve into something far grander and greater than we are now. And you, my friends, my students, are at the cutting edge of this evolution with these new practices. Just your luck. And now our exercises for the week. The first exercise is I want you to pick a quantum mentor. Think of somebody, an individual, a man, a woman, someone who you aspire to be like, someone that you have great admiration for, and connect with that person. Once you've picked the person, connect and align in a quantum level, realizing that all is one, that all is connected, that everything is consciousness and energy, and that consciousness weaves and directs energy. And so by your very intention for this to happen, will make it happen. Now, you have to have a certain faith and belief that it will happen. You can't be totally skeptical. I mean, if you do this and you're totally skeptical, probably very little is going to happen. But again, what are beliefs? Beliefs are vibration of energy. And so when you believe that this is possible, and again, it's what quantum physics teaches us, when you believe that it is possible to connect with a quantum mentor, enter into that person's wisdom, insight, imagination, creativity, and be guided, you will be guided. So do that for 5 minutes each day. The second exercise is to reimagine an aspect of your past that no longer serves you. Choose a problem area, an area where you are stuck, where you think you may have established a biased memory. Again, look for an area where you have absolutes or strong emotional charges. Choose a lens, which is a different perspective, in which to examine this part of your life. Search diligently and sincerely like a detective looking for evidence, for clues that actually your memory has been biased and has blocked out important insights that will change how you view this particular situation. Once discovered, you can then begin to reprogram a new memory, a new story into your consciousness, which will override the faulty memory that previously you had been working with. Do this for 5 minutes each day. And then the third exercise is I want you to establish a relationship with your past and future self. Go to your future self and ask your future self, what do you want me to do? You know, you're talking to your future self now, you know the situation I'm in. You know the choices I have. You know the obstacles I'm facing. You know the opportunities and lack of opportunities. You know everything about me because you are me, only you're in the future. Help me and guide me to make good decisions. Go to your future self, and at the same time, if it feels comfortable, you can mentor yourself in the past. Work at establishing a relationship with the past self, the present self, and the future self. So there's 3 parts of you that you can interact with. Now, when you go to your past self, at first it's going to feel a little strange. But what you do is you simply focus back on a time in your life where you needed to make an important decision, and you made it, and it was the right decision. Well, you can go back and you can help yourself to make that decision. And when you do, you say, I am your future self. You don't know that I exist, and of course it doesn't know you exist. But I am your future self, and I want you to know it's very important for you to make this decision, and then just repeat several times what you want your past self to do, what decision you want him or her to do. Or maybe you're going through a rough time, and just focus back in your life where there was a very difficult time in your life and that you really needed assistance and energy and resourcefulness to see yourself through. Okay, what you do is you say, I am your future self, and I am giving you energy. I am giving you courage. And just send that energy back to your past self. And when you do, always say that I am your future self, and you end it with, you can always call upon me anytime you choose, and I will assist you. You can always count on me. Now, here's something quite amazing. If you can take this on as a habit and start mentoring yourself in the past, what will happen is this will give you confidence that your future self is now active in your life, helping you now in the future. And how can you be so assured of it? Because if you're doing it now to yourself in the past and it becomes a habit, then why would you change that habit? So, of course, what this means is your future self is now mentoring and helping you with advice, with guidance, with energy. Now, how reassuring is that? For the final exercise, as we have been doing each week in the master class, choose 3 mind power techniques to practice this week, directed towards the success goals you have chosen for yourself. Create success in your life. Spend 15 minutes on these 3 techniques. So have a fun week, an exciting week, a productive week, Do your exercises each and every day, and we'll see you next week for Masterclass number 6. Welcome to Masterclass number 5. And in this session, we're going to talk about quantum time. For as long as I can remember, I've been puzzled by the passage of time. The fact that time could go from present to past, and something that happened to us would suddenly disappear and not be there anymore, always puzzled me. And many times I would be with my wife and we would be coming back from a holiday perhaps and would be on the plane, and I'd say to her, "And now it's in the past." And it was always a mystery to me. And intuitively, I knew that time is different than how we experience it. And I was about to find this out in a very big way. It was 2001, and I was doing a seminar in Vancouver, Canada. And I finished the seminar, and I walked down the stairs of the stage to go to the back of the room to sign books and answer questions. And as I walked off the stage, what came into my mind, a voice said to me, "Your investments are going to be fine." Now, I hadn't been thinking about my investments at all, and I thought it was rather strange that this voice should say that to me. Let me give you a little backstory. 3 weeks earlier, I had made some very sizable investments that had gone horribly wrong. In fact, I had lost over $100,000 in 3 weeks. And needless to say, I was concerned about that. But here the inner voice said to me, "Your investments are going to be fine." So I told my wife later on that evening what had happened. And she went, "Well, that's good, John," because she wasn't that pleased that I had lost $100,000. But what intrigued me is, how does it know? How does this inner voice know that my investments are going to be fine? Unless in some way it could see into the future. So I was very relieved, but of course I had no idea, are my investments going to do well or not? Over the next couple weeks, they lost more money. And now I was down over $200,000. I'll tell you, it's risky to be in speculative stocks. Over the next month, they continued to lose money. Now I was down over $250,000. But the voices said, "Your investment is going to be fine." That's what the inner voice told me. Then what happened is I started making back the money. Now I was only down $100,000. And over another month, I was even. And then over another month, I was up $100,000. At that point, I sold the investments. The voice had been right. But now that got me really intrigued. How did it know? How was it possible? And it said with such assurance that your investments are going to be fine. Now, how did it know unless the future had already happened? And somehow my subconscious had been able to go into the future, see that my investments had been fine, and report back to me in the past. But that's exactly what had happened. So that got me very interested, and I started to read and research all I could on quantum time. And what quantum time tells us is that past, present, and future are happening simultaneously. Now, I know this is not how we experience it. In our normal everyday life, time seems linear. In the dimension that we live in, it is linear. That past comes before present comes before future. This is the way it works. And yes, in the dimension of time and space, this is the way it works. But in quantum reality, What physicists tell us is that past, present, and future are actually happening simultaneously. As incredible as that sounds, that's what quantum physics tells us. Let me tell you another experience that happened to me. It was a couple years after this incident, and I threw out my back and I was bedridden.